Well, I was born in 1952 at Roaston 8, which was just across the road from my parents, Eric and Alice Short. They lived on the corner of East and Orange Street.
And I was also born in Parkes. My mum and dad were Joan and Malcolm Hawke, and we lived on a little property on the banks of the Yarrabundi Creek called Molly Riley out at Yarrabandi. Yeah, it was, I had my first meat pie on the day man landed on the moon. I was allowed to buy my lunch for the first time, and we nipped down to Hamer's General Store and get a pie in a brown paper bag, and we went to the principal had a TV, so we went to his house and watched the moon landing there. It was more to stay inside and read a book. I was being told to get outside, get some exercise. When we lived at Ellendale, Dad was share farming, and there was this lovely orchard of, I assume it was Ellendale mandarins now, and it had lots of concrete paths through the orchard, and it seemed enormous when I was a little girl, and I can remember riding my bike, on these concrete paths. I was the oldest, and then I had two younger brothers, so I was probably 5 or 6 years older than them, so I was pretty much just my own, I entertained myself. I went to school at Ootha for kindergarten to 2nd class, and then when I started 3rd class we moved again to Trundle, and that's where I finished. I was there at Trundle from 3rd class to 4th form.
Wow.
Yeah. So I went to Red Bend, did my HSC there. Then I went to Teachers College at Armidale for 3 years, and then I went and taught in Queensland for a bit. From 1984 till halfway through 1989. I went back to Orange, and I was there, worked there in retail for about a year, 18 months. Then I came back to Parkes, and then I was the librarian at Forbes for 7 years, because I'm also a librarian as well as a teacher. I bought a house, 65 Courage on the Street, and so I'd work at the library all week. Then I cooked at the Grand Hotel on Friday and Saturday nights, and because as you know, when you're buying a house it takes all the money that you have. And then I worked at Elsie's nursery on a Sunday, and I didn't take any pay for that, but I got stuff for my garden, and that all worked out well.
So how did you get to the RTA? RMS? Or...
Okay, so by then I'd married John, and Isabel Powter was our next door neighbour, and she convinced me to go for this job at RMS, and so I did that, and I won it, and then I was there for 20 years, I suppose.
M&D.
Through the M&D. Love at first sight?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no.
All my schooling in Parkes, I guess I started off, would have been 1958, infant school in Bushman Street. Then in 3rd class went across the road to the primary school, and I was one of many tens or hundreds of thousands that were taught by Ruby Stack.
Oh my goodness.
And then 1962 East Park School opened up, and so I was in the first lot of people that went to that school. I was in 4th class, 5th class, 6th class in East Parks, then to the high school for, I guess, 1st form to 6th form. Then I won a teacher's scholarship through the HSC that year, and tossing up whether to be an accountant or a teacher, and seeing the, I guess the scholarship was going to pay for everything, I made that decision. But by that time I'd mucked around so much that I couldn't get into Sydney, and I got into Armidale, UNE at Armidale. 3 years of a degree, mainly mathematics, and then I did term 1 of Dip Ed, went prac teaching at Kempsey, did a week of prac teaching there, decided that wasn't for me, and so I went straight from Kempsey back to Armidale and told the powers that be what I decided, and then from there I went back to Parks. And luckily my father had a family earth moving business. He was able to put me on the payroll, get me to drive a truck. I joined the M&D in 1984. The production was Oliver. Patrick Garvey was directing it. David Ward was helping him make the sets. I was a friend of David Ward, and so I was up there a few days helping. I was up at the theatre helping with the sets up there. And I think about a couple of weeks later, Patrick said one of my casters had to pull out. His wife was having trouble with her pregnancy, and so he asked me if I'd like to be on the stage. I had been on the stage once or twice back in primary school and high school, so I said, oh yes, I'll see how it goes. Yeah. And so I was the new grandfather of Oliver.
And can I just add in here that John excelled when he was on the stage, because he won't tell you this, but he would just put himself into a role so wholeheartedly. It was like he was a different person on the stage, which is obvious because you're playing a different character. But he was reported to have done the best nude scene fully clothed.
Wow.
And
Not in Oliver.
Not in Oliver. This was some years later.
I'm going to say, where was the nude scene in Oliver?
In a one-act play, and the play won an award, best ensemble production. But the adjudicator said that John had done the best nude scene fully clothed that he'd ever seen. He was very, very, very talented on the stage.
See,
a lot of volunteering, not as much now, but I guess I started volunteering for Meals on Wheels, and then on the reception desk up at the neighbourhood centre, and for a time I was doing community transport there, and then started doing housebound library.
You know, years ago when Bella's first opened, and I can remember going in there to have a coffee on a Saturday morning, which was a big deal because this was the whole new this coffee scene thing, and there were two blokes in there playing chess, and I thought, holy smoke, you know, Parks has really changed. Who would have thought 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that you would see two blokes together that weren't in a pub for a start, but in a coffee shop playing chess. It was like, yeah, I think the culture of the town is slowly changing.
Yeah.
You know someone, you've been with them for 30 years, you think, yeah, I've got it going up. I've heard all of these stories. And he sits down and tells me this story about 1967. Billy Thorpe came to town to do a concert at the Hospital Fete. And there was some billy cart race, and it went from downtown up to the hospital. So there was John and Terry Sheridan and David Ward and Steve Blackstock.
Yeah.
And they put together this billy cart, and because John was the skinniest and the littlest, he got to be the driver. Lightest. And the other three blokes, God love them, they were in charge of pushing. That'd be a fair distance from the main street to the hospital.
All uphill.
All uphill. And what happened? It fell apart or something, didn't it?
Yes, the billy cart, we had a bit of trouble with the scrutineers at the start because it was made out of two bicycles, and so it came together as a trike, 3 wheels. Yeah, I think we argued the point quite a bit. David had done a little bit of research, and so they let us enter anyway. As it turns out, we were leading the race with, we were probably in Rose Street, I guess, yeah, coming up Rose Street towards the hospital. And I think some of the welds had let go, and so I was desperately trying to, I still had the handlebars on the front single wheel, desperately trying to keep it in a straight line, but gradually crept over to the right, and then we, I guess, didn't quite disintegrate. Say David Ward because he lived across the road from me. Jeff Tinker, he lived a couple of blocks down East Street. Yeah. And there was the Johnson boys, Keith and Al Johnson's boys. They were actually where Bob Tinker lives now, and that was just about 3 houses down from us. So yeah.
I used to holiday with my grandmother who lived in Bushman Street, just two houses up from where the little shop is. And there was a girl there who lived there called Lulu Symes, and Lulu Symes and I, struck up a bit of a friendship. And my aunt was a hairdresser at the time, down when Ron Baldwin's Hairdressers was down near the bottom of the Leagues Club. Anyway, she was a bit of an idol as far as I was concerned, so this day I decided that I'd give Lulu a haircut because she had long plaits. So I, found a pair of scissors and proceeded to chop the plaits off. That didn't end well for me. But anyway, she got a decent haircut then from my aunt because they needed to fix up what I'd done.